I'm Jan Hall, producer for No Glory, and I'd like to welcome you and our performers to St Giles Church this evening, the Poets Church, for Conscientious Objectors Day, to honour those courageous people of World War I. Cold Star's Writing, our title, is a phrase or fragment from Wilfred Owen's Fragments, his short, devastating poem about a young soldier's death. And tonight we also honour him and the other war poets whose contribution to our understanding of the futility and the horror of World War I has been so profound and important. The power of what they brought back in their language, the way they helped us see the unseeable, bear the unbearable, just helping us to understand it without us turning away, is a marvel, and we thank and love them for it. We meet during a government-led World War I centenary that has its own narratives, attempting to justify that war as one that was necessary, celebrating the British spirit, quote, comparing it with Diamond Jubilee celebrations. The justification there is used to justify current warmongering. It does have a political purpose. And there's also been an attack on the war poets. Max Hastings, in a recent documentary on World War I, referred disparagingly to Sassoon and his kind for spreading gloom, undermining the war effort. Well, we have great pleasure in welcoming Sassoon and his kind tonight. We have great pleasure in welcoming a wonderful lineup of poets, readers and musicians to help us reflect on that war and what the poets brought back to us, but also to bolster our spirits as peacemakers. So I'll introduce them now. Nettie Robinson, Tony Woods, Tom Miller, performing November 1918 by Michael Garrick, and Siegfried Sassoon's Everyone Sang. And now I'd like to introduce our first reader, our first poet, George Szirtes. The mighty George Szirtes, as described on Radio 4's The Verb quite recently. T.S. Eliot Poetry Prize winner, twice more shortlisted for the Eliots, and a literary treasure that we share with Hungary as he writes and translates in both languages. So please welcome George Szirtes.
Thank you very much. It's a great honour and a pleasure to be invited. I'm going to read two things in this spot, both by myself. This first is very light. It's called Scrap Songs. What it says here in the subtitle is the First World War for Children. So it's a series of little rhymes whereby you go through the First World War, and the idea is this is being set to music. So I'll read you that first. In Sarajevo, far away, a shot rang out and the Archduke lay dead, dead, dead as a well-fed trout pulled from the river, and so the world was changed forever. It's 1914, late July. The Archduke Ferdinand has to die, said Gavrilo Princip, who took his gun and did what he thought had to be done. The Archduke's nation ruled and bossed Gavrilo's land. This was the cost. But many nations were so linked, having sworn to defend each other, that pretty soon, before any had blinked, everyone was in all kinds of bother. If you hit us, we'll hit you first. Come on, you chicken, do your worst. I don't know who'll be settling scores, but my big brother is bigger than yours. Everyone feels they're in the right, everyone feels that they must fight. Our people must live, they all declare, all we want is our own fair share. It won't last long, it'll soon be over. We'll beat you up and then recover. It'll be like a short summer storm. We'll just slip into this uniform. We will be soldiers, bright and brave, and though it might be a close shave, we'll be heroes with memories worth keeping. We will be swimmers into cleanness leaping. So they start. The war is big. The boys in khaki have to dig. They dig their trenches and wait to shoot. Mud thickens under each heavy boot. Christmas is over, the uniforms down. Generals read by a low-slung lamp. They shoot and fire big guns. Snipers wait till you raise your head and take their aim and bang, you're dead. And here come the tanks, and they weigh tons. War isn't now what war was. So it goes on from year to year, move forward, move back, stick in the mud, and what rhymes with mud, now whisper? Blood. Blood up your sleeve, blood in the ear, but see, we're winning, victory's near. Oops, not yet. Oh, sing, oops, oops. Throw in more men, provide more troops. Some go crazy, some get lost, some are wearing a coat of frost. But it's not horror all the way. Men dream and scheme and play and pray, so life proceeds from day to day. After it's over, things have changed. All the maps are rearranged. Some return and hope to find the world welcoming, warm and kind. Some are crippled, some are blind. The Archduke now is 5 years dead. There's someone in his place instead. But places change and places shrink. Nations must forge a brand new link. 4 years of fighting, then the peace. Everyone says that war must cease. But 30 years later, back once more to fight another, different war. Nothing is settled once and forever. Peace is a gift we may receive. Time is a long and troubled river with treacherous currents up its sleeve. Here we gather on its bank, in sight of neither gun nor tank. Let us be kind as kind can be. We've had 2 wars, let's not have 3. This is very different. This is from a book. It's called The Man Who Wove Grass. I won't read all of it. But it comes from a story which I can't remember where I heard, possibly on the radio. There was an English farm labourer who went off to war and he came back with shell shock. And he wouldn't speak. He couldn't speak. He couldn't speak to anyone. The only talking he did, they discovered, was to horses. So he talked to horses. And while he was in the recovery camp, he took to making his clothes out of grass. So he made himself grass shoes, grass uniform, grass coat, and so on. This is how many parts? The 4 part, but only just 3 of the parts. Do not know the parts. The Man Who Wove Grass. The man who wove grass made himself a wardrobe fit for the summer, when grass was all he'd need to dress in, when no icy wind would probe his warps and webs, so that his head might bleed the memories that left him dumb, undreamt, as if that grass, the marron and the weed, might bind a wound and stop a mouth, or tempt nature back into the place he'd known once, in mist-blanketed fields, in ponds, in unkempt gardens, among horses, in the governance of creatures fed and watered, in pale, blear dawns, as if grass by some chance could be what his mouth was, his mouth stale with refuse, as he went about on hands and knees, his mouth to the ground, leaving a faint trail of grief behind him. He lay under trees, knitting grass vests, weaving socks of grass, grass boots, grass berets, grass jerkins and puttees, swathing himself in the uniform of loss, in a premature interment, it was said, and there'd be some grass mausoleum or palace with a plaque for him, as for the other dead, under the grass, because nature without human agency was just nature, and nature's teeth were red. I'm moving on to the 3rd part. Grass that leaves a smear on trousers, on knees and elbows, already cladding us for war and interment. Grass cheap on the trees, grown damp in late hours, the grass floor of childhood forests, where armies of shadows move in formations. Yet more grass between paving stones, down alleys, poking through walls, through slithering mud, obliterating entire families. Grass that grows inward, thickening the blood and lining the bones. Grass that cushions the skull from within. Grass that seems to flood from orifices. Meadows of grass that billow and muscle through the gut. Grass trembling with fear in a deluge. lightning illuminated under a full sky in the head, grass that gathers in the ear to prevent its splitting, grass luxuriant in the lungs and forever settling there, grass that is madness, that spreads slant in the heart's wind against the throbbing door of the heart, pressing and exuberant, grass on which we lie flat out to restore some sense of balance against the sky with its alien birds and uneasy pallor. And the last part. The man who wove grass moved through a world of blades without effort, as if grass were no more than green water, and he an expert swimmer through various shades of green. Such innocent madness did not matter to the world, since he was one of many veterans of indeterminate age, escaping the clatter of general warfare. He wove according patterns, and patterns were soothing. He was his own mother, doing up his own floral buttons. Grass parted for him, then drew together behind him, as water does. It was his element. He knew its delicate touch, the light as feather sweep as it moved aside, its resilient and flexible habit of rising again after drought, after flood, after fire, after almost any event you could imagine. Grass allowed, no doubt. It was closing over him, even now, as certain as the air he was breathing, calmly, in and out. Thank you.
Good evening to you. My name is Matthew Crampton. I'm joined here by Mark Winstanley. I was talking with a friend the other day and they said everything at the moment is World War I. Every program I watch, every debate I hear, every gallery I go to, when will it end? And I was somewhat tempted to say to them, I'm sure it will be over by Christmas. But it won't be, and it shouldn't be, because we have got a lot of remembering to do. And we've got to keep remembering until things become clear. We're going to sing you a quick song now. It's a true folk song because it came from the folk. It just bubbled up from some of the folk who did some of the fighting. If you want to find the general, I know where he is. I know where he is. I know where he is. If you want to find the general, I know where he is. He's pinning another medal on his chest. I saw him, pinning another medal on his chest. I saw him, pinning another medal on his chest. If you want to find the major, I know where he is. I know where he is. I know where he is. If you want to find the major, I know where he is. He's playing with the mademoiselles. I saw him, playing with the mademoiselles. I saw him playing with the mademoiselles. If you want to find the captain, I know where he is. I know where he is. I know where he is. If you want to find the captain, I know where he is. He's home on a 7-day leave. I saw him, home on a 7-day leave. I saw him home on a 7-day leave. If you want to find the sergeant, I know where he is. I know where he is. I know where he is. If you want to find the sergeant, I know where he is. He's drunk on the dugout floor. I saw him, drunk upon the dugout floor. I saw him, drunk upon the dugout floor. If you want to find the private, I know where he is. I know where he is. I know where he is. If you want to find the private, I know where he is. He's hanging on the old barbed wire. I saw him, hanging on the old barbed wire. I saw him, hanging on the old barbed wire. If you want to find the enemy, I know where they are. I know where they are. I know where they are. If you want to find the enemy, I know where they are. They're sitting in the house of Lords. I saw them, sitting in the House of Lords. I saw them sitting in the House of Lords. Thank you.
Hello and good evening everybody. My name is Lindsay German, I'm from the Stop the War Coalition, and we're very, very happy to be supporting this event tonight and to be supporting the No Glory campaign. I think all of us are aware of the horrors of 100 years ago and the 4 years that followed that, and I think we're all aware of the way in which our government is using the commemoration to try to justify present wars and future wars. And one of the things that I hope will come out of this evening and hope will come out of the general campaign is that we don't want any more wars. We don't want people dying. We don't want people suffering in the way that they did in 1914 to 18 and as they suffered in subsequent wars, which have all become more and more terrible as time has gone on. And I think this is a message that we want to send very strongly to the government. Michael Gove seems to think that the view that we have of the First World War is a view that we've received from 60s radicals and from the play Oh What a Lovely War, from the war poets themselves who were obviously too defeatist for the liking of the present warriors who are sitting in the House of Commons. And what I think we need to say very, very strongly is that the message that we get from the First World War isn't something that came from the 1960s. It isn't something that people dreamt up. It is something that the poets and the writers and the artists and all the other people who lived through that war, they were the people who turned against the war. They were the people who said this war was wrong, and they were the people who directly experienced it and wanted to tell us about their experiences. And that, it seems to me, is the most important thing that we need to take from this. And we should remember that the people who suffer most in wars are the people directly affected. Today, that is civilians much more than it was military 100 years ago. But these are the people that we should listen to because they know what that war meant and how they suffered and how they died as a result of it. And I'm very, very happy tonight to be able to introduce our next poet who is going to perform for you, who's a man called Michael Rosen. He has many, many attributes. He's a writer and a poet and a professor he is now, and he's a radio broadcaster. He does all these things. And one of the things I like most about what he does actually have a kind of monthly letter to Michael Gove in The Guardian, which talks about what's wrong with his education. And I think the last time I saw Michael before tonight was at a performance of Oh What a Lovely War, which was in Stratford in the Theatre Royal on the 50th anniversary, and it had Michael Gove portrayed as a donkey on the pier at Brighton, which I thought was a pretty accurate sort of portrayal. So I'm very happy to welcome him tonight. I'm very happy that we do have our own 60s radical who is going to talk about the war and who is going to give us some very fine poems. So please welcome Michael Rosen.
Thanks very much, Lindsay. Good evening to you all. O Lord, our God, help us to tear their soldiers to bloody shreds with our shells. Help us to cover their smiling fields with the pale forms of their patriot dead. Help us to drown the thunder of the guns with the wounded writhing in pain. Help us to lay waste their humble homes with a hurricane of fire. Help us to wring their hearts of their unoffending widows with unavailing grief. Help us to turn from our roofless with their little children to wander unfriended through wastes of their desolated land in rags and hunger and thirst, sport of the sun flames of summer and the icy winds of winter, broken in spirit, worn with travail, imploring thee for the refuge of the grave and denied it, for our sakes who adore thee, Lord. Blast their hopes, blight their lives, protract their bitter pilgrimage, make heavy their steps, water their way with their tears, stain the white snow with the blood of their wounded feet. We ask of one who is the Spirit of love, and who is the ever-faithful refuge and friend of all that are sore beset, and seek his aid with humble and contrite hearts. Grant our prayer, O Lord, and thine shall be the praise and honour and glory, now and forever. Amen. That was Mark Twain, better known perhaps for Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn, but there he was in the 1880s. It's a wonderful collection of poems called The Lost Voices of World War I, edited by Tom Gross, that came out in the 1980s. Pacifism in one country doesn't make much sense, so I think we're against war internationally, and I want to be international today, and I want to read a poem by a German soldier who died on the Somme on the 21st of September 1914. His name was Alfred Lichtenstein, and he was born in Berlin. And I'll read it to you in English, and then I will try to read it in German, in the spirit of this evening. The Battle of Saarburg. The earth is growing mouldy with mist. The evening is heavy as lead. Electrical crackling bursts out all round, and with a whimper, everything breaks asunder. Like old rags, the villages are smouldering on the horizon. I am lying, God-forsaken, in the rattling front line. Many copper enemy birds whirl around my heart and head. I brace myself in the greyness and face death. And that was his last poem, and in German it sounds something like this. Die Schlacht bei Saarburg. Die Erde verschimmelt im Nebel, der Abend rückt wie Blei. Rings reißt elektrisches Krachen und wimmernd bricht alles in zwei. Wie schlechte, lumpend qualmen die Dörfer am Horizont. Ich liege, Gott verlassen, in der knackenden Schützenfront. Viel kupferne, feindliche Vögelein surren um Herz und Hirn. Ich stemme mich steil in das Graue und biete dem Tode die Stirn. Thank you. One of the great anti-war poets of the First World War was a French poet called Marcel Martinet, brought to life in a wonderful book by George Pizes, where he translated the poems, many of them for the first time ever, into English. And here's part of one called Human Rights. Again, I'll read it in English and then in French. 1916, 10 million men are dead, 1 million men from France, and those who will return, it was when they left the warmest and purest blood of Europe. This blood spilt, this blood soiled, this blood frozen. How many more of these millions who will return with bodies wasted, smashed, ruined, with hearts corrupted, worn out and weary of the world. That's war. You laugh, and you breathe better, beautiful Europe, light and conscience of the world. Oh, charnel house. 10 million, the emperors, the presidents, the kings with their parliaments, their lackeys, their ministers, working and discussing, and perhaps at night they dream and fear their battlefields. And on those very nights, millions of men far away over there in the slaughter are waiting. And again, on those nights, sometimes in peaceful, tranquil cities, bombs from planes kill bunches of children, women, old men, calmly asleep. And he wouldn't have known that not far from here, a school was bombed in Poplar, and indeed children died in the First World War from one of the first aerial bombings, and in French it sounds something like this. Droit des gens. 1916, des millions d'hommes sont morts, 1 million d'hommes de France, et ceux qui reviendront, c'était quand ils partirent, le plus chaud, le plus pur de tous les sangs d'Europe, se sont versés, se sont souillés, se sont glacés. Combien de ces millions encore qui reviendront avec des corps minés, abîmés, ruinés, avec des cœurs gâtés, usés et las de tout? C'est la guerre. Tu ris et tu respires mieux. Belle Europe, lumière et conscience du monde. Ô charnier! Des millions, les Césars, les présidents, les rois avec leur parlement, leurs laquais, leurs ministres, travail et discours, et peut-être qu'ils songent la nuit et qu'ils ont peur de leur champ de bataille. Et ces nuits-là, les millions d'hommes, ils sont au loin, là-bas, dans la mort, attendant. Et aussi ces nuits-là, parfois, sur les cités tranquilles, des obus d'avions tuent des grappes d'enfants, de femmes, de vieillards, calmement endormis. Another wonderful collection let me recommend to you is called Scars Upon My Heart, Women's Poetry and Verse of the First World War. And to read you a poem by a woman called Tessa Hooley. She calls it a war film. We forget that there were war films that people watched during the First World War in cinemas right here, and that's what she's responding to. A war film. I saw with a catch of the breath, and the heart's uplifting, sorrow and pride, the week's great draw, the mob's retreat, the old contemptibles who fought and died, the horror and the anguish and the glory. As in a dream, still hearing machine guns rattle and shells scream, I came out into the street. When the day was done, my little son wondered at bath time why I kissed him so, naked upon my knee. How could he know the sudden terror that assaulted me? The body I had borne 9 moons beneath my heart, a part of me. If someday it should be taken away to war, tortured, torn, slain, rotting in no man's land, out in the rain, my little son. Yet all those men had mothers, every one. How should he know why I kissed and kissed and kissed him, crooning his name? He thought that I was daft. He thought it was a game, and laughed and laughed. And I'll finish with a poem that I wrote for the last Iraq War. When they do war, they forget how to count. They forget how to count, and that's how they do it. They come, they kill, they go, they give us no numbers of the ones they kill. No numbers, no names. They disappear them, they vanish them. It's how they do it. They come, they kill, they go. Names are deleted, names are uncounted, bodies are unincluded, faces are unremembered. That's how they do it. They come in, they flash out, they mop up, they take out. No numbers, no names, no names, no numbers. And it's worth it, they say. It's worth it, believe us. It's worth it, believe us. Of course it's worth it. It's so cheap, it's so neat if you forget how to count. If you forget the numbers, if you forget the names, if you forget the faces, that's how they do it. But we're counting. Watch us. We're counting. Listen, we're counting. And we count.
One of the most famous of the war poets, at least during the war itself, was Robert Szirtes, who'd found fame writing monologues for the vaudeville and for the music hall, monologues such as The Shooting of Dangerous Dan McGrew. He was too old to be called up, but he still went out to France and he worked on the ambulances there. And he wrote a book called Memoirs of a Red Cross Man. And in it, he wrote a series of poems and monologues which sought to give voice to the ordinary soldier, but he did it in the music hall style. The words are direct, theatrical, emotional. Here's one of the poems. It's called My Job. And I've put it to a tune. So My Job by Robert Szirtes. The time is drawing nigh. At 7 by the captain's watch I'm due to go and do it. I'd like to have it nice and neat and pleasing on the eye. And I hope the God of soldier men will see me safely through it. Because you see it's something I have never done before. Until you has experience, new stunts are always trying. The chances are I'll never have to do it anymore. At 7 by the captain's watch, my little job is dying. I've got a little note to write, I'd best begin it now. I'm not so good at writing notes, so here goes. Dearest mother, I've had so many hot old do's, I've scraped through safe somehow. And now I'm on the very point of tackling another. A little job of hand grenades, they call for volunteers. They pick me out, I'm proud of that. It seems a trifle dicky. If anything should happen, well, there ain't no call for tears. And so I hopes this finds you well, your ever-loving Mickey. A bloody death I don't seem for to care. I only hope to even up how soon the blighters get me. I'm sorry for them perishers, what corpses in a bed. I only hope mine's short and sweet, no linger longer lying. I've made a mess of life, but now I hope to make instead. It's 7 sharp, goodbye old pals, a decent job in dying.
To show our support this evening for the No Glory campaign, the work it's doing currently and over the next few years. And on this day also I'm proud to pay tribute to the enormous courage and principle of the many, many conscientious objectors who've stood up to state brutality and violence over the decades. Their story is indeed insufficiently told, but they are inspirational figures who represent the finest characteristics of humanity. Our next performer is the writer and broadcaster A.L. Kennedy. Allison's works include novels, short stories and non-fiction, many of which have been extensively translated into German, French, Spanish and other languages. She has received awards too numerous to mention, but which include the Encore Award, the Saltire Best Book Award, the Somerset Maugham Award, many Scottish Arts Council Book Awards, and the Austrian State Prize for European Literature. In 2007, her novel Day won the Costa Book of the Year Award, and her new collection of short stories, All the Rage, is just out. It's a particular pleasure for me to welcome Allison, as she is not only a committed anti-war campaigner, but also a dedicated anti-nuclear protester. She has been a vociferous critic of the UK's wars of aggression in Iraq and Afghanistan, both in her writing and at speeches at anti-war demonstrations. And she's blockaded the Faslane nuclear submarine base on the Clyde in protest against the Trident nuclear weapons system and government plans to replace it at a cost of over £100 billion. In 2007, when she attended her second blockade of Faslane, she said, "With manufacturers baying for new weapon systems and a ramped-up nuclear power industry to support them, we have to say that enough is enough." This couldn't be truer. When it comes to war and nuclear weapons, whether we're talking about now or 100 years ago, we have to say together, enough is enough. Please welcome A.L. Kennedy.
Good evening. Somebody actually smaller than me. I look like my grandmother. I'm mentioning that because my grandmother, when I was little, told me a story. She said the men in her street marched away to World War I. She's quite an old grandmother. My grandfather was her second husband. She said they all marched away, and she remembered them all marching away. And none of them came back. And she never forgave that government, and she never forgave any other government. She's a wonderful, angry woman for the whole of her life. And I'm very grateful to her. And because of that, I'm not a big... I didn't blockade Faslane myself. Lots of other people were much more good at it. But when I was at school, partly because of my grandmother, the cadet corps in my school, because it was that kind of school, you had to wear at least one uniform every day. It was founded by refugees, Serbian refugees who came over at the beginning of World War I, and they were very into all of that. And I decided that I didn't want to go to the Armistice Day Parade because the Armistice Day Parade didn't seem to be about the armistice, it seemed to be about what happened before. And I said to my headmistress, "Can I not go?" And she said, "Don't you want to die for your country?" At the time I didn't say anything, but ever after I said, "No, I want to live for my country. Can I please do that? Can I please, particularly now, when I would be punished for being young, and punished for being old, and punished for being disabled, and punished for disagreeing, and punished for being uppity, and punished for being a woman, and punished for being black, and punished for being gay. Can I just live? Can I just be in a country that will let me live? Even out with war." So my grandmother remembered. You can now remember the story that she told me. I never forgot the story that she told me. We're here to not forget, we're here to remember, and not allow the rewriting and the playing fields of evil to be triumphant again. I know they take it personally, but really. So I'm going to read some little bits, not very much of me, particularly not my poetry, because you've done nothing to me. They're laughing loud at me. So this is a little bit from Edmund Blunden, who's not a terribly well-known war poet, but he also had a beautiful prose and a beautiful prose book called Undertones of War, and this is from the introduction. "I must go over the ground again. A voice, perhaps not my own, answers within me. You will be going over the ground again, it says, until that hour when agony's clawed face softens into the smilingness of the young spring day. When you, like Hamlet, your prince of peaceful war makers, give the ghost a hic et ubique, then we'll change our ground, and not that time in vain. When it shall be the simplest thing to take in your hands, and hands of companions like EWT, WJC and AGV, in whose recaptured gentleness no sign of death's astonishment or time's separation shall be imaginable." As I said, it's an amazing memoir, and it contains the memory that Brazilian writer Ubaldo Ribeiro talks of as an invincible memory, the memory of people passing one to another, the actual truth of something. And this is a little bit from his memoir of being in the front lines. It's not a theory, he was there for a very long time. "That night, our attacking companies went forward and lay in a ditch. There was white frost. Behind them, a few field guns. I went to see them on the morning of the attack, and I remember chiefly the voice of G. Salter as he emerged from a rough shelter, stretching his stiff arms and trying to move his eyebrows like a man weak, cursing the frost. I remember the familiar song of my old companion Dugan, now for the last time, everybody's doing the Charlie Chaplin walk. He broke off, and without self-pity and almost casually, he said, it's the third time they've sent me over. The third time. They'll get me this time. Nor would it have availed to use in reply one's familiar trench tags or to speak out the admiring friendship which never fully found words. Dugan seemed to know, and he was tired. Lapworth, who'd just joined us, went by at the head of his platoon, a youth with curling golden hair and drawing-room manners, swinging his most subalternish cane from its leather thong, and he was the last officer to go by. Orders had been admirably obeyed, the waves extended, the artillery gave tongue at the exact moment. News of the attack always seems worse as it is supplemented. At last, some messengers, wildly scribbled as may be imagined, but with a clearness of expression that may not be so readily imagined, came to Zollern Trench. One was from Dugan. Stuff Trench was taken. There were few men left. They had established bombing blocks. G. Salter had sent back some 40 prisoners. A message was brought with some profanity by my old friend CSM Lee, whose ripped shirt was bloody and who could not, frankly, recommend Stuff Trench. The concrete emplacement halfway thither, looking so dangerous on the maps, had not been found dangerous, and the gunners' preparation there had been adequate. But he said they were being steadily blown out of Stuff Trench. Should we be able to hold it? Well, hell, he was holding it when I got this. And so departed Lee. tall, blasphemous and brave. Looking about in an now hazier October light, I saw some German prisoners drifting along and I stopped them. One elderly gentleman had a jaw which seemed insecurely suspended, which I bound up with more will than skill and obtained the deep reward of a look so fatherly and hopeful as seldom comes again. Others not wounded sourly observed my directions down the communicating trench. As they went, heavy German shells were searching thoroughly there, and I do not think they ever got through. Their countrymen lay thick in these parts. Even the great shell hole which we hazardously used as a latrine was overlooked by the sprawling corpses of 2 of them, and others lay about. And I'll just read a little bit. Get out of your way. There's a project which you can all take part in called Letter to an Unknown Soldier. If you go online, you'll get more details about it. Certain writers were asked to write a letter, as it were, to a soldier known only unto God, and then it's open to everyone. So this is what I wrote. I'm not in any way comparing my experience to Edward Blunt's, or indeed my title, but there we are. I call you dear, because you were dear. How could you not be? All the life in you, all the words and thoughts and touches, how could they not have been dear? From someone, somewhere, there was a smile solely for you, and then one day, one moment, an end to every joy in that. And my dear, I am sorry. Although my sorrow will not help you, and alters nobody but me. I am sorry we paraded on without you and made a bad peace. I am sorry we condemned ourselves to do it all again. The men and women falling, dear lips, dear hands, dear faces, ruined again, and fire again, and metal again, and gas again, and waiting, and waste, and hate, and grief again. I am sorry we have repeated ourselves so often since you left us, varying our precise methods of execution, but always intent on executing, half-hearted when we try to build, to save, to love. I'm sorry we continue to find each other expendable, and that names are lost and significance falters. I'm sorry we found it so easy to record how much your boots cost, or your rations, your buttons, your bullets, and found it so necessary to forget what was priceless about you, irreplaceable. I'm sorry we ever learned the trick of thinking which can render a human being into numbers. Numbers do not read, or fear, or laugh, or kiss. They are not missed. I'm sorry we embraced attrition and have never let it go. We simply hope that it won't take us, not this time, and will spare those we need, remove strangers. We run along the ghosts of duckboards and don't keep our heads down, and we don't know when the dark will come. I'm sorry that we couldn't learn from you. I don't thank you for your sacrifice, because you didn't want to be meat on an altar. You were better than that. You were a man, which is a beauty, can be a beauty, should be a beauty, should be kept from pain and shame, from shocks beyond bearing, and from being alone. I won't call you a hero. The meaning of that is worn away. It's a term that hopes to apologize for strategic and moral mistakes, a little gift to those who suffer. I'm not grateful that you stopped being part of my world, that I never had the benefit of your life in peacetime, your legacy, your experience, your ideas, of the way you were a friend or a father, a worker, a joker, a lover, yourself. I live in a hollower, colder nation for the lack of you. I pray you are at rest and require no prayers. I pray you should not be troubled to forgive us. I pray all the good stolen from you can still flower, can still rise and be recognized and speak.
just to reintroduce Tony Woods, Letty Robinson, and Mike Miller. Thank you very much.
Gunmetal greatcoat. my heart was shaken with tears, and horror drifted away. But everyone was glad, and the sun was gladness. The singing will never be done. 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 The singing will
Letty Robinson vocals and Tony Wood sax. Thank you also. Thank you also George Szirtes, Michael Rosen, Allison Kennedy for your readings, Matthew Crampton and Mark Stanley for their music, and the second half will be equally rich with Blake Morrison. More songs from Matthew Crampton. We have Samuel West and a finale from all our poets.
To rewrite some of the history of the First World War, but also to challenge what I reckon is the majority view and impression of the First World War, which is one that has actually been shaped by many of the poems and readings and artistic expressions that we're hearing about today, and I think it speaks volumes about official public life at the moment that we have an education secretary who has publicly lambasted academics and teachers for being unpatriotic, and we have a much missed culture secretary who spent time saying that poets and playwrights and comedians were oversensitive to the suffering involved in the First World War. Quite extraordinary, really. And one of the things these people have been saying, particularly about Wilfred Owen, is that his voice was not an authentic one. I don't quite know what they mean by that. He was at least there and present. But I think actually, it's true that at the time, in terms of the kind of public discourse, the words of Owen, Sassoon and the others were in many ways isolated. They were lonely voices, partly because of the government propaganda that was being pursued, and actually the forerunners of the politicians today were at the time delivering some gross propaganda really about how people who didn't fight or wouldn't fight were in danger of bringing shame upon their family, were liable to, were bringing into doubt their own manhood, and such appalling statements. The reality is, however, and this is something that isn't much referred to, at least so far in the discussion of the history of World War I is that as the war progressed, the people involved and the populations generally across Europe and beyond really turned into revolt against the war because the experience was so utterly degrading and horrific. And in fact, it's true to say that it was the soldiers themselves who had been sent to the front who finally brought the war to an end in 1917 and 1918. And it seems to me that more than anything puts the lie to the idea that these cultural voices that have survived are in some sense inauthentic or unrepresentative. It is in fact the case that these voices, I think, not accidentally, have indeed come to shape public perception and the real memory of the First World War. And it seems to me, rather than trying to undermine that fact, it's something that we should celebrate, that we now live in a society, partly because of the First World War and much of the experience as well over the last 10 or 15 years. We now live in a society where the vast majority of the population regard the settling of international disputes by war as something that should be rejected, regard it as something unacceptable. And in poll after poll, it shows that the people of this country, and indeed the people of countries around the world, reject the kind of foreign policy that has been pursued by our government, the previous government, and that I believe is being attempted to be defended by this very rewriting of the history of World War I. So I think it's very important that we continue the kind of campaigning and the kind of remembrance that we're involved in today. And on that subject, I want to invite you all to come back to listen to some more poetry and to listen to some more speeches and various other activities that are going to take place on August the 4th, which is the exact anniversary of the Britain's entry into the war. There's going to be an official celebration in Westminster Abbey. We're asking people to gather on Parliament Square in the early evening of August the 4th to make sure, if possible, that the media and the establishment can see the expression of what is the real popular opinion about the events 100 years ago and about the current foreign policies that are being pursued. So please put that day in your diary. I'm now going to introduce the rest of the programme for this evening. We're very, very pleased to have, first of all, Blake Morrison, who's a poet and a novelist many of you will no doubt know and read, author of 2 memoirs and an upcoming collection of poetry which is called Shingle Street. He'll be followed by another song, or I think maybe 2 songs, by Matthew Crampton and Mark Winstanley, who you've already heard from. And finally, we're very pleased to have Samuel West, the actor, director, member of the Wilfred Owen Association, no less, current chair of the National Campaign for the Arts, and a force for peace and justice in this land. So first of all, I'd like to give a big round of applause, warm welcome to Blake Morrison.
Thank you very much. One of the first words that comes to mind when I think about the First World War, indeed most wars, is futility. And that's the title of the poem, famous poem by Wilfred Owen, which I will begin by reading. Futility. Move him into the sun. Gently its touch awoke him once, at home, whispering of fields unsown. Always it woke him, even in France, until this morning and this snow. If anything might rouse him now, the kind old sun will know. Think how it wakes the seeds, woke once the clays of a cold star. Our limbs so dear achieved, our sides full nerved, still warm, too hard to stir. Was it for this the clay grew tall? Oh, what made fatuous sunbeams toil to break earth's sleep at all? Michael Rosen mentioned this anthology, excellent anthology, Scars Upon My Heart, women's writing from the First World War. And I'm going to read 2 poems from this and then 2 poems of my own after that. Of the various things that enrage one about war, there is its dependence on the exploitation of youth. How many wars would there be if only those of us over 35 could participate? And here is a poem by a woman called Margaret Postgate Cole, the wife, I believe, of the famous G.D.H. Cole, called, with a slightly ironic title, The Veteran, May 1916. We came upon him sitting in the sun, blinded by war. And past the fence there came young soldiers from the Hand and Flower, asking advice of his experience. And he said this and that, and told them tales, and all the nightmares of each empty head blew into air. Then, hearing us beside, poor chaps, how they know what it's like, he said. And we stood there and watched him as he sat, turning his sockets where they went away, until it came to one of us to ask, "And you're how old?" 19, the 3rd of May. And this other poem from this collection is written by an Irish poet called Catherine Tynan. We don't often think about the Irish in the First World War. 80,000 Irishmen volunteered in the first year. 200,000 in total took part. 30,000 died. And Catherine Tynan captures them at a moment at the beginning of war, August 1914, about the West Kent in Dublin, watching them in a poem called Joining the Colours. There they go, marching all in step so gay, smooth-cheeked and golden, food for shells and guns. Blithely they go, as to a wedding day, the mother's sons. The drab street stares to see them, row on row, on the high tram-tops, singing like the lark. Too careless gay for courage, singing they go into the dark. With tin whistles, mouth organs, any noise, they pipe the way to glory and the grave. Foolish and young, the gay and golden boys love cannot save. High heart, high courage, the poor girls they kissed run with them. They shall kiss no more, alas. Out of the mist they stepped, into the mist, singing they pass. I think any non-combatant feels a sense of, have I the right to write about war when I haven't been in one? But there are certain things that just stir your passions. The fury of an aerial bombardment, the obscenity of aerial bombardment, for example, which is partly what this poem called Stop is about. But also military jargon, or should we say government jargon, the doublespeak, which disguises the reality of war. And in this poem you'll hear kind of two voices: government bollocks about war and why it should be fought, and a kind of undermining of that at the end of each line. It's called Stop. As of today, the peace process will be intensified through war. These are safe bombs, and any fatalities will be minors. The targets are strictly military and civilian. Members of the press are free to report to the official centre. Early indications suggest a major break through residential roofs. The bombs were strictly targeted at random personnel. Any errors are a mere blip on the radar screen. Until our aim is achieved, we will continue missing. In modern war, mistakes are never made official. We can confirm that many civilians now enjoy peace underground. Several terrorists have been created overnight. Our smart bombs are subject only to stupid mistakes. We anticipate a stepping up of funerals. In another time zone, the bombs fall unsafely. There are reports of urgent talk under the rubble. Numberless children lie accounted for in morgues. Regrettably, we are unable to offer regrets today. This poem has been subject to certain restrictions. Stop. Another reason you might be moved to write a poem about war is if you know somebody who died in one, and I knew not well a boy who was at school with my son who died in Afghanistan, and when his mother tried to find the truth of what had happened, why he had died, and the MOD sent her some documents, she found they were redacted, that certain key bits of information had been blanked out. So this poem is about that, and I have to, if you see it on the page, you can see the redacting, so I think I just have to do that every time there's some redacting. I think it's okay to have, on our part, to recite poems about Iraq and Afghanistan because we're talking about the wars that go on still, despite all we think we have learned from World War I. This poem has been redacted in the interests of national security. It's an inquest into the death of a serving officer heard at a coroner's court for the MOD. On May the 9th, 2000, Lieutenant, who had begun his first posting at Fort just 12 days earlier, undertook a routine patrol with members of his platoon, including 2 guardsmen and an interpreter. It was the aftermath of the poppy harvest, and their instructions were to dominate the area of Helmand by repelling Taliban insurgents and winning local hearts and minds. 5 minutes after leaving base, they came under fire and took cover in a compound behind a high mud wall, where Lieutenant tried to radio for reinforcements, briefly standing in the entrance doorway to get a signal, which was when the bullet hit, finding the gap between his body armour and his collarbone and knocking him flat on the sandy ground. "Man down," his colleagues shouted. "Man down." Guardsmen radioed for a helicopter, while Guardsman, the team medic, wiped the blood from the hole in his right shoulder, the size of a 50p coin, staunching the flow with a field dressing as best he could. Still under fire, Lieutenant was placed on a stretcher and carried through irrigation ditches back to base. The ride was bumpy, but he kept talking as he lay there and even asked for and was given a cigarette. While awaiting the arrival of the helicopter team, he was injected with morphine in his right thigh and a Hemcom bandage applied to the wound. But his pulse was slowing. The bullet had ruptured an artery. The Black Hawk helicopter arrived 40 minutes later. During the flight, Lieutenant suffered a cardiac arrest and though operated on in hospital at camp, he failed to recover consciousness. Further tests at hospital in the UK, following his transfer by plane, confirmed the absence of brain activity. Parents and friends spent time at his bedside before the life support machine was turned off next day. The poem's sympathies are with his family for their loss, but it is satisfied that everything possible was done to save the life of Lieutenant, and it therefore refutes any suggestion that his body armour offered scant protection, that his Bowman radio did not work properly, that the medical equipment supplied to the troops was inadequate, and that the 65-minute delay between the bullet hitting and the helicopter landing, the product of a communication failure or of a navigation error on the part of the pilot, was what cost Lieutenant his life. Nor can the poem judge whether his deployment as platoon commander on his first tour of duty in an area notorious for insurgents and snipers was negligent to the point of criminality. As to claims that the war in Afghanistan is unwinnable, that teenagers are being used as cannon fodder, and that their deaths serve no purpose whatsoever, to comment would be inappropriate. In short, after hearing all the evidence, the poem concludes that Lieutenant suffered injuries that were regrettable but unsurvivable while on active service for his country, his death being the result of 1A, necrosis of the brain, due to 1B, major blood loss, due to 1C, a gunshot wound. Signed, Coroner, acting independently for the MOD. Thank you. Slight change to the programme. George Szirtes, who can't stay till the very end, much though he would like to, is going to read his final contribution now. Thank you.
Thank you. It was very good to hear a Michael reading poem in German and in French. The First World War produced an extraordinary crop of English language poets. You think of Owen, Sassoon, Rosen, Gurney, Graves, Edward Thomas, Charles Hurl. It's an enormous gathering. Maybe it's a sort of big gathering in almost any other language that I know. I was asked recently to look at Hungarian poets of the First World War, who of course fought on the other side, and there was relatively few. So out of this flowering of poetry goes, if you like, a kind of feeling to which we always feel connected. Now, the most famous poem of Owen is which goes Dulce decorum est, which you will know, which the quotation finished pro patria mori. And probably nowhere more clearly than in war do you hear the thunder and bluster of patriotism. And whenever the thunder and bluster become very, very loud, you know there's trouble in the air. What it does, it deprives those who are not patriots of this particular place, but of some other place. It turns them into something less than human, and it will point the finger at them, as I've seen them point on posters at the moment. What I'd like to do is I'll read you just two poems, not by me. I will read you this poem by Sassoon called Reconciliation, in which he looks to be reconciled with a German soldier. My own parents were very badly hit by the Second World War. An awful lot of their family died out. Indeed, my parents refused to buy German goods for decades and decades afterwards. They're both dead now. But this is a small gesture, and this is Sassoon writing in November 1918. The poem is called Reconciliation. when you're standing at your hero's grave, or near some homeless village where he died, remember, though your heart's rekindling pride, the German soldiers who were loyal and brave. Men fought like brutes, and hideous things were done. And you have nourished hatred, harsh and blind. But in that Golgotha, perhaps you'll find the mothers of the men who killed your son. The other poem by Chesterton is much more angry, and it's ironically titled Elegy in a Country Churchyard. The men that worked for England, they have their graves at home, and bees and birds of England about the cross can roam. But they that fought for England, following a falling star, alas, alas for England, they have their graves afar. And they that rule in England in stately conclave met, alas, alas for England, they have no graves as yet. Thank you.
Hi there. Mark and I are going to do a medley of 3 short pieces for you now. The first is a very old anti-war song called Johnny Has Gone for a Soldier. I'll then read another poem from the music hall poet, war poet, Robert Szirtes, a poem called The Volunteer, someone who aspires to conscientious objection but doesn't quite make the grade. And finally, Home Lads Home, from the poem by the war poet Cicely Fox Smith, put to music by Sarah Morgan. But first, here's a song most popular during the American War of Independence, called Johnny Has Gone for a Soldier.
Here I sit on Buttermilk Hill. Who can blame me? Cry my fill, and every tear would turn a mill. Johnny has gone for a soldier. Me, oh my, I loved him so. Broke my heart that he should go. And only time will heal the woe. Johnny has gone for a soldier. I'll sell my rod, I'll sell my reel, I'll even sell my spinning wheel, and buy my love a sword of steel. Johnny has gone for a soldier. I'll dye my dress, I'll dye it red, and through the streets I'll beg for bread. For the one that I love from me has fled. Johnny has gone for a soldier. Here I sit on Buttermilk Hill. Who could blame me? soldier. Says I, my country calls. Well, let it call. I grin politely and decline with thanks. Go let them plaster every blighted wall. Here's one they don't stampede into the ranks. Them politicians with their greasy ways. Them empire grabbers, fight for them, no fear. I've seen this mess a-coming since the days of Algeciras and Agadir. I felt my passion rise and swell. But what the hell, Bill? What the hell? Says I, my country, mine. I like their cheek. Me, mud bespattered by the cars they drive. What earns my measly 50 bob a week? What sweats red blood to keep myself alive? Fight for the right to slave, that they may spend. Them in their mansions, me in my slum, no. Let them fight for what's worth defending. I've nothing. Let the Kaiser come. And so I cusses hard and well, but what the hell, Bill, what the hell? Says I, if they would do the decent thing, and shield the misses and the little ones, why, even I might cry, God save the king, and take my chances with them hungry guns. But we've got three, another on the way. It's that what makes me snarl and set my jaw. The wife and nippers, what of them, I say, if I get knocked out by this blasted war? If I get proper busted by a shell? But what the hell, Bill, what the hell? Yes, what the hell's the use of all this talk? Today some boys in blue were passing me, and some of them they had no legs to walk, and some of them they had no eyes to see, and, well, I couldn't look them in the face. And so, I'm going. I'm going to declare that I'm under 41, and to take my place, to face the music, with the bunch out there. A fool, you say? Well, maybe you're right. I'll have no peace unless I fight. I've ceased to think. I only know I've got to go, Bill. I've got to go. Oh, the seas in Flanders, the sun was dropping low. With tramp and creak and jingle, I heard the gun teams go. When something seemed to set me a-dreaming as I lay of my old Hampshire village at the quiet end of day. Brown thatch with gardens blooming, with lily and with rose, and a river running past them, so quiet where she flows. Wide fields of oats and barley, and elderflowers like foam, and the sky all gold with sunset, and the horses going home. Home, lads, home, all among the corn and clover. Home, lads, home, when the working day is over, there'll be rest for horse and man. When the longest day is done, and they'll all come home together at the setting of the sun. Well, captain, boxer, traveller, I see them all so plain, their tasseled ear caps nodding all along the leafy lane. Somewhere the bird is singing, and the swallows flying low, and the lads all sitting sideways and singing as they go. Home, lads, home, all among the corn and clover. Home, lads, home, when the working day is over, there'll be rest for horse and man. When the longest day is done, and they'll all come home together at the setting of the sun. And many a horse gone too, of all the lads and horses from those old fields I know. Well, Dick, he fell at Grinchy, and Prince beside the guns, on that red road of glory, a mile or two from Mons. Dead lads and shadowy horses, I see them all so plain. I see them and I know them, and I call them each by name. Riding down to shining waters, with all the west aglow, and the lads all sitting sideways and singing as they go. Home, lads, home, all among the corn and clover. Home, lads, home, when the working day is over, there'll be rest for horse and man. When the longest day is done, and they'll all come home together at the setting of the sun, and they'll all come home together at the setting of the sun.
Welcome, Mr. Sam West.
Hello. To mark International Conscientious Objectors Day, I wanted to start with this poem by Edna St. Vincent Millay called Conscientious Objector. I shall die, but that is all that I shall do for death. I hear him leading his horse out of the stall. I hear the clatter on the barn floor. He is in haste. He has business in Cuba, business in the Balkans, many calls to make this morning. But I will not hold the bridle while he cinches the girth, and he may mount by himself. I will not give him a leg up. Though he flick my shoulders with his whip, I will not tell him which way the fox ran. With his hoof on my breast, I will not tell him where the black boy hides in the swamp. I shall die, but that is all that I shall do for death. I am not on his payroll. I will not tell him the whereabouts of my friends, nor of my enemies either. Though he promised me much, I will not map him the route to any man's door. Am I a spy in the land of the living, that I should deliver men to death? Brother, the password and the plans of our city are safe with me. Never through me shall you be overcome. So, some poems from the First World War. This is a sonnet by Charles Hamilton Sorley, which was found in his kit after his death at the Battle of Loos in 1915. When you see millions of the mouthless dead across your dreams in pale battalions go, say not soft things as other men have said, that you'll remember, for you need not so. Give them not praise, for death, how should they know it is not curses heaped on each gashed head, nor tears, their blind eyes see not your tears flow, nor honour, it is easy to be dead. Say only this, they are dead. Then add thereto, yet many a better one has died before. Then scanning all the o'ercrowded mass, should you perceive one face that you loved heretofore, it is a spook. None wears the face you knew. Great death has made all his forevermore. Two poems by Szirtes. Glory of Women. You love us when we're heroes, home on leave, or wounded in a mentionable place. You worship decorations, you believe that chivalry redeems the war's disgrace. You make us shells. You listen with delight by tales of dirt and danger fondly thrill. You crown our distant ardours while we fight, and mourn our laurelled memories when we're killed. You can't believe that British troops retire when hell's last horror breaks them, and they run, trampling the terrible corpses, blind with blood. Oh, German mother dreaming by the fire, while you are knitting socks to send your son, his face is trodden deeper in the mud. The General. Good morning, the General said when we met him last week on our way to the line. Now the soldiers he smiled at are most of them dead, and we're cursing his staff for incompetent swine. He's a cheery old card, grunted Harry to Jack as they slogged up to Arras with rifle and pack. But he did for them both by his plan of attack. And to finish off, 3 poems by Wilfred Owen. The Parable of the Old Man and the Young. So Abram rose and clave the wood and went, and took the fire with him and a knife. And as they sojourned both of them together, Isaac the firstborn spake and said, My father, behold the preparations, fire and iron, but where the lamb for this burnt offering? Then Abram bound the youth with belts and straps, and builded parapets and trenches there, and stretched forth the knife to slay his son, when lo, an angel called him out of heaven, saying, Lay not thy hand upon the lad, neither do anything to him, thy son. Behold, caught in a thicket by its horns, a ram. Offer the ram of pride instead. But the old man would not so, but slew his son, and half the seed of Europe, one by one. Disabled. He sat in a wheeled chair, waiting for dark, and shivered in his ghastly suit of grey, legless, sewn short at elbow. Through the park, voices of boys ran saddening like a hymn, voices of play and pleasure after day, till gathering sleep had mothered them from him. About this time, town used to swing so gay, when glow lamps budded in the light blue trees, and girls glanced lovelier as the air grew dim, in the old times, before he threw away his knees. Now he will never feel again how slim girls' waists are, or how warm their supple hands. All of them touch him like some queer disease. There was an artist silly for his face, for it was younger than his youth, last year. Now he is old, his back will never brace. He's lost his colour very far from here, poured it down shell holes till the veins ran dry, and half his lifetime lapsed in the hot race and leap of purple spurting from his thigh. One time he liked a blood smear down his leg, after the matches carried shoulder high. It was after football, when he'd drunk a peg, he thought he'd better join. He wonders why. Someone had said he'd look a god in kilts. Aye, that's why. And maybe too to please his Meg. Yes, that was it, to please the giddy jilts he asked to join. He didn't have to beg. Smiling they wrote his lie, aged 19 years. Germans he scarcely thought of, and no fears of fear came yet. He thought of jewelled hilts for daggers in plaid socks, of smart salutes, and care of arms, and leave, and pay arrears, esprit de corps, and hints for young recruits, and soon was drafted out with drums and cheers. Some cheered him home, but not as crowds cheer gold. Only a solemn man who brought him fruits thanked him, and then inquired about his soul. Now he will spend a few sick years in institutes, and do what things the rules consider wise, and take whatever pity they may dole. Tonight he noticed how the women's eyes passed from him to the strong men that were whole. How cold and late it is. Why don't they come and put him into bed? Why don't they come? And to finish, Dulce et decorum est. I'm sure I don't need to tell you, as George has pointed out, that the last two Latin lines of this poem translate as sweet and decorous it is to die for one's country. Bent double, like old beggars under sacks, knock-kneed, coughing like hags we cursed through sludge, till on the haunting flares we turned our backs and towards our distant rest began to trudge. Men marched asleep. Many had lost their boots, but limped on, bloodshot. All went lame, all blind, drunk with fatigue, deaf even to the hoots of tired, outstripped 5-9s that dropped behind. Gasp, gasp! Quick, boys! An ecstasy of fumbling, fitting the clumsy helmets just in time. But someone still was yelling out and stumbling, and floundering like a man in fire or lime, dim through the misty panes and thick green light, as under a green sea, I saw him drowning. In all my dreams, before my helpless sight, he plunges at me, guttering, choking, drowning. If in some smothering dreams you too could pace behind the wagon that we flung him in, and watch the white eyes writhing in his face, his hanging face like a devil sick of sin, if you could hear at every jolt the blood come gargling from the froth-corrupted lungs, obscene as cancer, bitter as the cud of vile, incurable sores on innocent tongues, my friend, You would not tell with such high zest to children ardent for some desperate glory the old lie, dulce et decorum est, pro patria mori. Now each of the poets are going to read one more poem each, and we're going to finish with a fragment by Wilfred Owen that gave its name to tonight's event.
I guess everyone here has got family memories of some sort or another of people in their families who died, fought, or possibly objected. In my family, quite common amongst Jews, is that we had people in our family who fought against each other. One French great-uncle fighting for France, and the other a great-uncle fighting for Germany. They both survived that war, but didn't survive the next one. What we don't know quite often is that amongst the Germans there were some wonderful, heroic, conscientious objectors. We don't know our history very well about conscientious objectors, and the greatest of them all was Ernst Friedrich, who produced a wonderful exhibition, an international exhibition that toured Europe in the face of many difficulties and opposition, called War Against War. He himself refused military service, was placed under observation in a mental institution. In 1916 he participated in illegal assemblies of anti-militarist and revolutionary youth, and in 1917 was imprisoned for an act of sabotage which he justified as a great patriotic act. I'm going to read you just a little bit of his statement, which I always think is like a poem. I'll read it to you in English and just a little bit of it in German, so that we have ringing in our ears the sound of a German pacifist. In English it goes: to human beings in all lands, I who am falsely called German, instead of just simply man, I call out to the icy regions of the north. I call out to Africa and to America, to Asia and to Europe, to all regions that have ears to hear. I call out but two words, and these are man and love. And even as the Australian weeps when he encounters pain, and laughs and makes merry when joy and happiness are granted him, even so dost thou weep, my brother Eskimo, and so, O African and O Chinese, weepest thou too, and so weep I. And as we all human beings, equally feel joy and pain, let us fight unitedly against the common monstrous enemy, war. We shall unite in protesting against, in weeping over the accursed mass murders for which we all bear equal guilt. But let us also raise our eyes cheerfully in the red dawn of freedom and peace to the fatherland of all fatherlands, to the fatherland of human beings, which stands above all. And a bit of that in German. Menschen aller Länder, ich, der ich Deutscher, fälschlich werd genannt, statt einfach Mensch. Ich rufe nach des Nordens kalter Zone und hin nach Afrika und nach Amerika, nach Asien und Europa. Überall, wo Ohren sind zu hören, rufe ich zwei Worte nur, und die sind Mensch und Liebe. Und so wie der Australier weint, wenn ihm ein Schmerz begegnet, und lacht und jubelt, wenn ihm Freude, Glück beschieden, so eben weinst auch du, mein Bruder Eskimo, so Afrikaner und Chinese, weinst auch du und du und du und ich. In aller Vaterländer, Vaterland, ins Vaterland der Menschen, und dieses über alles. Dankeschön.
The shallows were mostly small lakes of what was no doubt merely rusty water, but had a red and foul semblance of blood. Paths glistened weakly from tenable point to point. Of the dead, one was conspicuous, He was a Scottish soldier and was kneeling, facing east, so that one could scarcely credit death in him. He was seen at some little distance from the usual tracks, and no one had much time in Thiepval just then for sightseeing or burying. Death could not kneel so, I thought, and approaching I ascertained with a sudden shrivelling of spirit that death could, and did. The Schwaben redoubt ahead was an almost obliterated cocoon of trenches in which mud and death and life were much the same thing, and there the deep dugouts which faced the German guns were cancerous with torn bodies, and to pass an entrance was to gulp poison. In one place a corpse had apparently been thrust in to stop up a doorway's dangerous displacement, and an arm swung stupidly. Men of the next battalion were found in mud up to the armpits, and their fate was not spoken of. Those who found them could not get them out. The whole zone was a corpse, and the mud itself mortified. Here we were to hold the line for an uncertain sentence of days. And this is from Harry Patch. Some of you will know Harry Patch. He lived to be 111. He was the last man left who had fought in the trenches, and inconveniently for the politicians who wanted to stand next to him, he was not a fan of war in general. He said it was a license to murder. And as it says behind me, thou shalt not do murder. And this is what was read out at his funeral, which is from The Last Fighting Tommy, which was his autobiography. Again, something that happened while he was at the front. We came across a lad from A Company. He was ripped open from his shoulder to his waist by shrapnel and lying in a pool of blood. When we got to him, he said, "Shoot me." He was beyond human help, and before we could draw a revolver, he was dead. And the final word he uttered was "Mother." I remember that lad in particular. It's an image that has haunted me all my life, seared into my mind. Here's to nobody having that anymore.
You can't help but wonder what lives they might have had, all those who died so cruelly young in the First World War, and what the poets might have achieved who died. What would Wilfred Owen have gone on to write? What might Isaac Rosenberg have done? What might Edward Thomas have done? This is a poem in memory of Edward Thomas, written by his friend Eleanor Farjohn, a short elegy called Easter Monday. In the last letter that I had from France, you thanked me for the silver Easter egg which I had hidden in the box of apples you liked to munch beyond all other fruit. You found the egg the Monday before Easter and said, "I will praise Easter Monday now. It was such a lovely morning." Then you spoke of the coming battle and said, "This is the eve. Goodbye. And may I have a letter soon?" That Easter Monday was a day for praise. It was such a lovely morning. In our garden, we sowed our earliest seeds, and in the orchard, the apple bud was ripe. It was the eve. There are 3 letters that you will not get.
Fragment by Wilfred Owen. I saw his round mouth's crimson deepen as it fell, like a sun in his last deep hour. Watched the magnificent recession of farewell clouding, half gleam, half glower, and a last splendour burn the heavens of his cheek. And in his eyes, the cold stars lighting, very old and bleak, in different skies.
We've heard great riches tonight, properly honouring our conscientious objectors, stretching back 100 years to their time, stretching ahead to the time of more and more committed peace activism. The novelist Lindsay Clark famously said that good literature should be in the service of life rather than just literature, and what we've heard tonight has been very life-affirming, and I thank all of our performers and readers again tonight on behalf of No Glory, and thank you for coming, and please look at our site, sign the letter, and again, thank you, and thank you.